Christmas miracle. Oh, Jesus. Come on, guys. Why would you do that to me before I film it?
Did you get it? Did you get it?
We should have had that for April Fool's Day.
Yeah, it's just a random day of the week.
That's how we roll.
That conference has been a thing for like a week now.
Yeah. Actually,
Okay.
it was a thing a few months ago, and then it became a thing again.
Well, the
Yeah.
joke's on you because 3 Drops of Pee came out. Welcome to our part 1 of Paintbrush Basics. Now, one thing that I feel is so important that people understand is that the reason that a brush plays such an intricate role in your art, it's supposed to be an extension of you. So it's important that you understand, first of all, the anatomy of a brush. You know, I think that there are some basics. You know, you've got the hair of the brush. This is what's known as the ferrule. The ferrule is crimped usually onto a handle. And then sometimes there's a final thing, which is like they call it the dip. They put the dip. So, if you have a bunch of brushes, you're like, oh, my blue one is the Rhapsody brush. So, you know that. That's just good to know, be able to identify a brush. As you probably know, and again, these are some basics, but we're going to get into today hair. The next one, part 2, is going to be head shapes, the different and their uses. So no head today, unfortunately, but plenty of hair. They come in 2 different lengths. You have your long handle and short handle. Why is that? Well, your short handle is generally for when you are on a table. You're doing watercolor, you want detail work. This is probably not a great example while it's wet. You want to be able to do your art and have good control. However, the reason you want a long handle brush is if you're at an easel, it's very important that you, first of all, like I said, it's that extension of you, and that you're, doing the lines and the marks that you kind of have in mind, and it's comfortable and it's balanced, and it gives you that distance so that either A, you're not so close up in your work that you're missing the big picture, no pun intended, and that you can also back up to see your subject matter. If like if I was painting Jamie, if I'm up here on my canvas, I can't enjoy my Jamie. So having it out there, now I'm just Expecto Patronum. There are a few other things that go into the quality of the handle of the brush. Most brushes, not all, but most brushes are wood handled, and they are lacquered, and that's designed to kind of protect them from swelling and water absorbing into the handle, because then it will split. But you still don't want to leave them in your water. You'll also find that they sometimes have a more matte finish or a kind of like this shiny finish. It really doesn't affect the performance of the brush that much. I think that for whatever reason, there's just people that prefer one over the other. Most watercolor brushes I find have that kind of really heavily lacquered handle, and the bristle brushes, which are designed to be kind of held a little bit further back, are more matte. Yet on the ends, the dip that I was talking about, that is lacquered for whatever reason. Katie brings up a good point. The lacquered finish is easier to clean, so if you wanted to use the back of your brush for removing paint or some detail work, I just flung stuff that way. It's easier to clean off afterwards because it's not going to absorb anything. So something to keep in mind. Keeping up with those handles in balance. Now, unfortunately, I only have a watercolor size one of these, but the same principle applies if you're, you can see that this brush, this is our Steinberg Kolinsky brush. You see how it has a kind of like that figure 8, that hourglass kind of look to it. That's, partially because, well, for watercolor, it's more comfortable when you hold down here, but it also, when you're using a longer handled version of this brush, gives you that balance, and having more weight at the other end prevents the top end from feeling heavy, and usually you can go longer. So it's interesting that adding more weight can make it feel lighter, but that's sort of how it works because of the force. And there's some physics involved that I don't know about physics, but I'm sure there's physics to it. It's going the distance. Right, so we want to prevent hand fatigue. So even though having something that has a little bit more meat at the end of it adds more weight, your wrist and the balance of it, you're not going to be having so much weight on the end, it's a physics thing. I would say the force of gravity, but I said force with this shirt on, then you had an episode. So, yeah. So, let's talk about hair. We're going to start with brushes that are for watercolor, okay? Some of the better known brushes are Kolinsky Sable, okay? Kolinsky Sable is probably, one of the highest end brushes you can use for watercolor because it is absorbent and it keeps a fine point. And you'll see, so this is a dry brush, and what you want is to see it come to a sharp point. That's a sign of a good brush, and holding together. And you can just see just how much water that can hold. This is a staple amongst watercolor artists, and it's great for anything from fine detail to regular just painting. It's very soft, it's very absorbent, it can do washes, it can do so much. But the most important feature is that it comes to a sharp point. That's what really is unique about this nice point that when it's made. Now, I have what I prefer, which is a synthetic version. I don't like personally using animal hair brushes, but I mean that's just me. But what I found is that just the technology is and what I found is just, gosh, this cockroach is on my mind. It's, oh my God. Okay.
Ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine. You just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Jamie, you're not helping.
He loves you.
He does. We go way back. So I like to use synthetic brushes. This is a Mimic Kolinsky brush. So this is designed to act like a Kolinsky brush. And, well, let me use this larger one. So you get that in some water. And again, you see this sharp point it comes to. That's what you're looking for. And this is very absorbent. The quality of synthetic brushes have come a long way. Now, why do some people prefer natural hair brushes? Well, if we're going to call a spade, a natural hair brush is going to be the most absorbent because by nature it's not plastic, it's actual hair that absorbs water. And also they generally are known to be more resilient. So if you're a heavy-handed painter or you like to keep brushes a long time, sometimes synthetics can wear down on you. Not always. I mean, I've had my set of the Mimic Kolinsky probably 2 years or so, and it still works as good as the first day I used it. So your synthetic brushes will work for all mediums. They will work with oils, they will work with acrylics, they will work with watercolor. They are extremely versatile, but it is something that you want to keep in mind that, I feel like it wears them down more when you're using them with something like oil, when you're using that natural product. So let's talk about some other hair that is used for watercolor. Squirrel hair, okay, is probably the softest. It's softer than Kolinsky. It is so soft. Great for washes, glazes. And when you're using a hair like this, what you have to realize is it is not designed to come to a point. So even if it was a round shape, it's not. It's usually called like a mop brush because it soaks up color. So let me actually paint something here. Well, I'm not going to paint something, but I'll put some paint down. Just cover large areas. Again, no. Well, I guess it kind of comes to a point, but it's not coming to a sharp point. And you can go in here and you can just see how much coverage you get. Now with that Kolinsky brush, it can do the same thing more or less. There's generally this, the pull of the brush, which is just, taking a line. So let's just go into something else here. That's kind of orange. I don't like orange. I like orange, I just don't like it for this. There's nothing wrong with orange. That's brown. I'm not used to using this set. A different order. Okay, what looks like purple? Well, what is that? I can't even. That's black. Oh, man.
On the red side.
you'd think, oh, maybe you're, yeah. There we go. There we go. Okay, so similarly to that squirrel hair, you're going to get fairly decent wash ability out of it. But you also will be able to, and of course if the paper was dry it would be a straighter line, get a finer detail line, get fine detail work because of that point it comes to, okay? Now you might ask, well, if the Kolinsky brush can do what the squirrel hair brush can do, why do I need a squirrel hair brush? Well, you don't need it, but it is less expensive. Kolinsky Sable is the most expensive hair used for watercolor brushes. It actually just might be the most expensive hair there is in terms of quality across the board. And we're going to talk more about Kolinsky again when we get to the oils and acrylic section. But those are just some of the very basics. There's even this is a mimic squirrel hairbrush, but there are other brushes that are used for watercolor, lettering, glazing. You might have heard of pony hair brushes. Now this is an example of a pony hair brush. This is a Creative Mark glazing brush. Very soft. It is not made of pony. It's not made of pony. Those are mythical creatures. They are made with just an assortment of natural hairs that are very soft. And again, glazing. Let's continue on our tour of this page. Covers a large area. Pony hair is not necessarily known for being the highest quality. I mean, like, those little plastic brushes you get in like those Crayola watercolor sets? I think that's pony hair, Again, it's not even pony hair. It's a lie. Everything's a lie. Marketing's a lie. And then this is actually camel hair. Now, these brushes are pretty interesting. These are Escoda brushes, and they're used for lettering and for watercolor. The hair, in my opinion, is definitely coarser than a sable. But let me just see what happens. I haven't actually used this brush, so I'm curious if it comes to a point or what. So not really, but it does come, can you see that? To like a crop top. No? Like, yeah. But let's just, so this could be a good brush, and because it's so long, you can hold a lot of color in it. For, like I said, like your lettering, or, you can use this for watercolor. I mean, there's no reason that you couldn't, but it's not necessarily going to give you the best results when it comes to the other hairs that are available. Okay, now sable comes in two different forms. There is Kolinsky sable, and then there is red sable. Now red sable is going to be generally found in oil painting brushes. It's not considered the highest quality. Kolinsky is considered the highest quality weasel hair, I guess, whatever you call it. Highest quality hair, sable hair. Sable hair is weasel hair. But you can find red sable watercolor brushes on the less expensive side. Still very soft, very absorbent. But the Kolinsky is considered the top of the line. Camel is also very good for tempera painting. That's another use for this. Personally, we just had these in the studio and they were camel hair. I'm sure they come in different shapes and sizes that are more conducive to, I don't know why they have to look like this. I mean, maybe there's something, I don't know much about the camel hair. I'm up here teaching about hair, which is weird. But anyway, that's somehow make me sound intelligent through that. I don't know how you'll do that. Now, how can you take something like a Kolinsky brush and put it on a whole nother level of quality? And the answer is handmade. Now, usually handmade quality, it's sometimes inconsistent. And I will find that with these are Winsor Newton Series 7 brushes. They are fantastic. They're very well made. You'll see just, how well they just come to that very sharp point. Because they're handmade, there is some inconsistency. Some brushes work a little, it's minor, but a little better than others. For whatever reason, just when the brush maker is making it, it's like a friggin' magic show. They take this Kolinsky hair and they put it in this twist tie, and it, like, if you can find video of this, like this, how the Series 7 brushes are made, it's mesmerizing how they do it, and it just becomes your brush. So that's pretty cool. So Series 7 brush is pretty well known. It's Series 7 because the Queen of England was a fan, and size 7 was her favorite size, so it's the Series 7. Little history lesson of things that aren't important. Okay, so now that we're moving into that oil and acrylic category, the things that we discussed for watercolor brushes are still important. Absorbency, I don't think I mentioned this, but like bounce of the brush, and what the bounce is just basically how the brush goes back to where it was in the first place. Did you see that, Will? So just the bounce, the amount of pressure it takes to do your strokes, that kind of thing. But when we're dealing with oil and acrylic, brush stroke retention is the name of the game. Brush stroke retention. What do I mean by that? Well, depending on what you're painting, you might want to see more brush strokes. It gives it kind of, it's definitely not a more photorealistic look necessarily, but depending on how much you want to see your brush strokes, you need to choose coarser hair. Now, I will show you some examples of that. So this is a Pro Stroke Pure Red Sable. I'm sure you could find Kolinsky Sable long handle brushes, but Red Sable seems to be, the main. If it just says Sable brush, assume it's Red Sable, unless it says Kolinsky, so then they'll want to advertise, this is the Kolinsky brush. So with these Kolinsky brushes, or these Sable brushes rather, similarly to the watercolor, absorbent, really nice point, all that stuff, basically very similar. But you use these brushes when you want those fine details, the maximum control. Let me see here. I had that in water, but I want to use oil, so I'll put that in some thinner. Okay. So you can start with just kind of looking at the fine line you can get, right? But then what you'll also notice with these softer hair brushes, you don't see the brush strokes. You see how it just goes down smoothly? That's one of the main things you're looking for when you're using a soft hair brush for oil or acrylic, okay? Hold for beeping. Everything's with me today, Christina. Now, when we're going to go through the spectrum of, I guess, softest to firmest hair. Okay, I think that's a good idea. I think that the next step is mongoose hair. Mongoose hair is a great in-between hair. This is an Isabey mongoose memory. It is going to be soft enough to not necessarily show brush strokes, but if you wanted to load it up with paint, it's resilient enough to kind of power through them. Unfortunately, I shouldn't demo this brush. No, not unfortunately. Fortunately, mongoose is no longer legal to sell in the United States. I think if there's brushes available, you can sell those, but no new ones are coming in. So, and this is a really, really popular brush amongst oil painters especially because it's so versatile. So what is a girl to do, as I often say? We have created something called the Homburg Premier brushes. Now these brushes are not mongoose, they're a combination of different hairs, but they will act, in our humble opinion, as good if not better than the original deal, the mongoose hair. But they are not mongoose, so we can sell these legally. So let's just take a look at some of the versatility that I was talking about. Okay, that's a very bright orange. So I'm going to come over here and just apply this fairly thick. And I don't know if it's picking up. Probably put too much thinner than that. Whoops. You can see, I don't know if you can see, some brush strokes, some light brush strokes through that, right? More or less? Yeah. Okay. not the smooth of the sable brush. But you can also thin it out, and you can see there are no brush strokes with that thinner paint. So this is your in-between one. This is going to be the most versatile of the oil painting brushes, because it won't give you the most brush strokes, but it will allow you to do that if you so choose. I need to clean this up. You know, I'm going to do this out of order, and I'm telling you, breaking the fourth wall, just because, you know, we're hanging out. I had Katie grab me some of these. I didn't realize we had these, and I thought this would be a good thing to show you. So these are our Imperial brushes. Okay, now these are one of our highest quality bristle brushes, which I guess I still am going in order, but this applies to, okay. So anyway, so this is our high-end hog bristle hair brush. What makes it unique, first of all, I think these are made in Germany. That's not unique necessarily. I think a lot of stuff's made in Germany. But is how it's made. So we actually had them cut open, and they actually, instead of just crimping the ferrule, you see here it's glued. So the handles do not come loose. You're not going to have, you know, loosey-goosey issues. It's going to stay in there. Now you'll also see the space here. Why is that important? The more that the paint travels down the brush, the more gunked up it gets, and God forbid it goes into the handle. That's when the handle can start to swell and crack if you leave it overnight, or, you know, even for just a couple of hours. So that's kind of, you know, gives you a little bit more wiggle room in that. And you can also see the way it's glued in there has this kind of curve shape, and that kind of mimics how it comes to a point at the top. Hog hair brushes, let me get my, this is a big one, are going to give you the maximum brush stroke retention, okay? So let's dive in. And I think I thinned that down too much, so try that again. These are going to power through your thickest paints and allow you to make very, very broad strokes. And if you're so inclined, paint in a more impasto fashion. You know, where it has some peaks to it. Oh, I missed the cup. How did I miss the cup? One of the things that you want to look for in a quality hog bristle brush is flagging. Essentially, what that is well, split ends. And I know that doesn't sound like a good thing, split ends. I mean, I know that I have mine taken care of professionally. Yes, I get my $15 haircuts. My wife's haircuts are way more expensive, I noticed. She can't go to like Sports Clips or something. But, I mean, she could, but she doesn't. And what that flagging does is it allows the bristles to trap more paint, control that tapering I was talking about, how, you know, it kind of comes together. And it's something that really, you know, it's going to be too small for the most part for you to see on camera, but the proof will be in the pudding of the brush, where when you use it, does it do what you're expecting it to do? And especially if you're, you know, more familiar with bristle brushes, you might be surprised if you get one that does not have that natural flagging on it, because it will not behave the way it should. It should behave that certain way. When it comes to oil paint, as much as I like to preach synthetic brushes, natural hair brushes are considerably more resilient when it comes to painting in oils, okay? Part of that is, you know, there's oil in natural hair. It's going to be more absorbent. It's going to be better in thinner. So rather than just, you know, some plastic that's in it, well, this isn't, but in a synthetic brush that your solvents can eat away at, the natural hair will be a little more resilient towards that. I don't think it matters almost at all in the watercolor, to be honest, but that's just, you know, where I am. I mean, if you're at a super fine detail level, you know, and you have something that you're comfortable with, I mean, do what works for you. However, there are other options. There are synthetic hairs, such as this is the Mimic Hog brush, okay? So this is designed to work the same way as the regular hog hair. You can use this for oils, but like I said, because this is a synthetic brush, I'm going to suggest it for acrylics. I'm sure you could use it just fine for both. But you see how you can maintain those brush strokes, and I'm adding a lot of paint? Yeah. That is because it is designed to, well, as it says, mimic the hog. And the way it does that is, first of all, there are hairs of different circumferences, different radiuses, what's the word I'm looking for? Hairs of different thicknesses, right? That are put throughout this. And these are also designed to hold a lot of color. Now, they have this feature where the hairs have, basically, imagine the hair is not a solid strand, but like a straw, right? Like a little straw. So these are designed so that they can actually soak up color. So if you wanted to paint thinner, you see how it's going up the bristles there? See that? So if you wanted to paint a little thinner, this brush can do just fine with it. It's a very versatile tool, this Mimic Hog. But, you know, and you can use it with oils, but it'll be best with acrylic, I think. There are some other brushes that, you know, we're kind of glazing over. You know, you've got ox hair, badger hair, sibling hair, other things out there. They aren't even really that accessible to me. You know, what we have in the studio are going to be your main go-to brushes. Although I am curious if you are using something that we have not discussed today, what you have experienced and why you choose to use that, whether it's ox hair or badger hair or any kind of hair. Hopefully not dog. That's all I hope and I pray that no dog hair. Now, how do we identify a bad brush? This is important. What do you not want in your paintbrush? First of all, the signs of a bad brush are not if hair is coming out in globs. Any natural hair brush, it's going to happen. The hairs get loose, and especially in the beginning. Now, I did a video earlier on called Age-Related Brush Hair Loss, and how I said it was the Benjamin Button of hair loss, because when they're new is when you have to really take the time. This is a synthetic, but you have to really take the time and work out those loose bristles so that you don't have to worry about fishing them out of your painting later. So just because you lose a little hair does not mean it's not a quality brush. If the ferrule is loose, that's not a good sign. That means that your brushes are all susceptible to becoming loose. So you want to make sure that that brush, when you're, you know, if you're in our store or whatever, that you know, kind of give it a little twist and make sure that it's on there well. You also don't want it to be splayed. You want it to hold together. So, for example, when you're painting, as we discussed, we want it to come to a fine point, right? That's very important when it comes to things like Kolinsky hair. If it doesn't come to a fine point, that's not a sign of quality brush. So whether or not you can tell from looking at the brush, based on how it performs, can you get hard edges? Can you get kind of straight lines? That, you know, if you notice that if you're taking your brush, right, and that's solvent, and what you don't want to see are splits. So you see how that all stays together? Basically what happens is the bristles will spread out on the page, but the tips kind of curve back in. That's a sign of a good quality brush. And you get sharp lines. See that? Yeah. Good stuff. Now, obviously, you don't want brushes that have dried paint on them or chipped handles. I mean, those are just givens. Those are gimmies, you know. But that's just the basic assortment of some of the more mainstream hairs out there that are available to you and their different uses. Now, in our second part of this video, we're going to talk about things like rounds and flats and brights and filberts and fans, and I can keep going, but I won't, because I have a whole nother video planned for it. So just wait, okay? Have a little patience. Not like me. I'm not patient at all. In fact, we're going to film it right after this. No, I'm not ready yet. What brushes are in your toolkit? What are your go-to brushes? What is the one brush you couldn't live without? I'd like to know. Leave that in the comments below. I will share with you in part 2 video, in my opinion, if you could only have one brush, what would it be? Okay, this is a little teaser, you know. What do I think is the one brush that you would want? But I'm not telling you now. I'm not. I already know what it is, but I ain't gonna. So you'll just have to wait and see what that is if you care, which I don't even know if I do. Decide what features are most important to you in a brush before choosing them. Then make a decision on which brush or brush collection will do the best to aid your art. And then follow me on Instagram at Mike Not Jerry, where that you didn't see that coming, did you? No, okay. Where I really would love it if you guys tagged me. You know, some of you guys do this already. Tag me in your artwork. I love seeing what y'all are up to. I'm on there all the time. So yeah, tag me at Mike Not. Did I say at Mike Not Jerry? At Mike Not Jerry. And you know, we'll have some fun. It's always fun. And we'll be back with talking about the various head shapes and, depending on the medium, their uses. One of the things that you'll find is that there are sometimes what I consider silly brushes. Silly. Now there's a funny brush, which is like made of little rubber bands, but silly brushes where I don't really see why I would need it. And so I'll share that with you. You know, some of the brushes that you might want to, you know, I don't want you to feel like you have to have. And really the best brush is what you have. You know, use what you have. You know, if you're going to get brushes, this is more of a teaser for that next one. We'll talk about some of the ones that maybe won't be necessary for your toolkit. Maybe they will be and you'll yell at me. I get yelled at all the time, all day long. As soon as we cut, y'all are going to start yelling. That's why I have to keep going, so that you don't yell at me. I have other questions for you. Do you like my facial hair? Do you think that it accentuates my face? I need these reassurances that I'm doing the right thing. As long as my wife likes it, I'm doing the right thing, right? Yeah. Yeah, I think that's all that matters. But compliments are always welcome, right? Right? Beautiful over there. So handsome, Ming. And this has just become a lawsuit. You guys have to know me better than to surprise me with anything before I come on camera. That's why you wait to tell me any bad news until after we're filming. Yeah, all the worst news I've gotten was, all right, now that we're done filming, we're infested with cockroaches. Yeah, it's bad. It's a bad move.
Should have had a cockroach under there too.
Oh, stop it. Stop saying cockroach. It's getting to be a problem.